Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's episode is brought to you by Daylight and Raycast. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Happy end of WWDC, Federico, or is it?
Is it the end? I don't know.
It's not. It's never really the end, right? It's the beginning, really, because for us, this is the rest of the year. This kind of sets up our next 6 to 9 months.
This is it's the end of the beginning. Is it?
I think that's an accurate thing to say. The end of the beginning. This is the pregame show of the rest of the year.
It's the end. It's the end of the beginning. Yes, that's right. It's the end of the beginning because now we're beginning the rest of the year, but it's the end of WWDC. Yeah, that works out. I think I know English.
Yeah,
somewhat.
Yes, you do. You do. You know it better than most English speakers, which is a little something. All right, why don't we dive into this week because we had a lot. We published a lot of stories this week and we're going to just kind of power through them. And I think we should start with the big overviews that we did.
Yes, and we did a bunch of them. So there's quite a few overviews that we need to go over. iOS and iPadOS 15. Where to begin? I guess from iPadOS. Big multitasking update. Well, let me rephrase. Moderate multitasking update, because I think a lot of people were expecting something radical, something more I guess inspired by the Mac maybe, and it's not that, right?
Right.
iPadOS 15 has a multitasking update that builds upon the current system. So you still have your slide over, your split view, your, the fact that you can have these combinations of apps, but you don't have resizable windows. You don't have, the kind of desktop that you can have on macOS. And so the changes in iPadOS 15, I think, there's a couple of things that are going to make it more intuitive for novice users and maybe slightly more flexible for power users like us. So the big change is this new multitasking menu that you can see at the top of the screen. You have this more sort of this ellipsis control at the top of the screen on iPad, and you can tap it to access these 3 buttons for full screen, split view, and slide over. And in some instances, like there's some additional options, such as when you're in a slide over window, but I just want to simplify here for the sake of the show. There's a new visual control for split view and slide over and full screen as well. There's a lot, you can now, this is something that I've been asking for forever, I think. You can now combine apps as a pair in the app switcher. So in the main app switcher, which is still there, you can pick up a window and you can drop it on top of another window and you create a split view there. And there's plenty of new system-wide keyboard shortcuts for managing multitasking with the keyboard. So I think the overarching theme of iPadOS is that Apple is trying to finally bring some parity to the different input methods, right? This feature you can use via touch, but you can also use via the keyboard. And you can use it with the pencil, you can use it without. So we're seeing some unification of the different input methods when it comes to the core ways to use an iPad. And the other feature that I want to mention, we covered it on one of our special episodes of App Stories this week. There's a new Quick Note system-wide feature that allows you to create a new note in the Notes app from anywhere on the system. And you can activate it, right, in a bunch of different ways. You can invoke a global keyboard shortcut to show this tiny floating sort of picture-in-picture-esque window to save any kind of note. You can drag with your pencil from one corner of the screen, or you can just highlight anything on a web page, right, and save it to a quick note, or you can even invoke it from Control Center. So this is I said it on App Stories, and I'm going to repeat it here as well. I think Quick Note is the first truly post-Magic keyboard feature of iPadOS, in the sense that it's the first feature that it was built from the ground up with a bunch of input methods in mind.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. One of the other overviews that we did this week was the macOS Monterey overview, and that's one that I wrote. And when I look at Monterey this year, it's an update that really is about continuing the effort to bring the Mac closer together with Apple's other platforms. And some of the big features of that really reflect that goal and that theme, which is, universal control, which is a way to move between Macs and iPads with a single set of pointing devices and a keyboard. Now, it has to be initiated from a Mac, which we talked a little bit about on App Stories, but it allows you to simultaneously use up to 3 devices using the same either trackpad and mouse and also keyboard, which is a really cool feature that I think I'm going to be using a fair amount. The other thing that is similar to that is AirPlay is now available for the Mac, so you can AirPlay from your iPad or iPhone to your Mac, play music or video or gameplay, that kind of stuff. I've tried this. It's not working in the beta yet, but hopefully soon. And then the other kind of tentpole feature that is unique to the Mac this year is Shortcuts is on the Mac. And that to me is probably the biggest change that's going to affect me day to day, because as I have spoken about on App Stories, very often use my Mac with an iPad very nearby to run my shortcuts, and then use things like handoff to move information from one to the other. And I'm really curious about how much of that I can bring just to the Mac, so that when I'm working at my Mac, I'm just working at my Mac. And when I'm working on my iPad, I'm just working on my iPad. There are a lot of other things coming in Monterey this year, but they are the kind of things that you'll find across all the different platforms. Things like notification changes and focus, the new focus mode, some of the FaceTime stuff and messages and all those, and of course the quick notes. So there a lot of those features are common amongst all of the platforms, but it's really this universal control and shortcuts for Mac that really set this platform apart from the others this year.
Yeah. And you wrote about shortcuts, right? Too, with the standalone.
I did.
Standalone story on the site. Okay, tell us a little more about that. So in case our Unwind listeners missed the story, they can go check it out.
Yeah, it's a story that really starts, in a way, it starts all the way back at the beginning of the story, which is workflow and the years that have gone since then. But I really was thinking both about that and about the origins of this app as an indie developer project with, from a bunch of young developers to something that's integrated tightly with all of Apple's OSs now. And I was also thinking about a story you wrote about 4 years ago called The Future of Workflow, which was written at the time that Workflow was acquired by Apple. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Shortcuts coming to the Mac really kind of closes the circle on that, because when Workflow was acquired, we were, I think, rightfully concerned that it might get absorbed for the engineering talent and not really amount to much on any of Apple's platforms, that it might become features here and there. It might, be integrated in that sense, but not necessarily remain a standalone app that's developed and expanded. But those concerns were unfounded, because, in fact, the best case scenario that you laid out 4 years ago has in fact happened, and now it's available not only as a much improved version of what it was back then on the iPhone and the iPad, but it's also on the Mac now. So it's a really great success story, I think, and one that really excites me, because I think that Shortcuts has the potential to really be the glue that holds together so much of the power user features amongst all of Apple's platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great story. Before we move on, we should mention iOS 15 as well. I know that a lot of folks are saying that it's a relatively minor update. I think that's true. It's not like we don't have the massive feature, right, that is new this year for both users and developers. We don't have something like widgets and major home screen changes like last year. We don't have dark mode like 2 years ago in iOS 13. But there's still a few things that I want to call out. Focus and redesign notifications. So you will be able in iOS 15 to effectively design your own custom do not disturb mode. And you can create these multiple focus modes for things like I'm working out, or I'm at the gym, or I'm at work, I'm reading, like whatever you want to turn into a custom do not disturb sort of focus mode on your iPhone and iPad, you can do that. And there's a few niceties that go along with that, such as you have integration with shortcuts, so that you can do something like, when I activate this focus mode, also automatically run these actions. And you can do things like, when I activate this mode, which is now like all of the existing sort of custom do not, like iOS already had these custom do not disturb modes before. They were all separate from each other though. Like do not disturb, sleep, and driving mode. They all existed before. Now they're all together and part of this bigger focus feature that also includes adding your own, right? And what you can do now is you can define more specifically, like I want to be able to, to get notified by these people or these apps at these times, right? And you can also do things like when I activate a specific mode, I want to automatically hide certain pages of my home screen, and I just want to leave this one active. So realistically, now you can do things like this is my work home screen and this is my personal home screen. When I'm at home, just show me the home screen and let me be notified by personal contacts. But as soon as I get to work, maybe start my timer and disable all my personal apps and allow me to get notified only by emergencies at home or stuff like that. And I think this is going to be a real compelling set of features for a lot of regular folks who maybe aren't necessarily interested in the latest changes to shortcuts or something like that.
Right.
What else is new? Like, we're going to do a proper recap on App Stories for Monday's episode. So I just think live text is also going to be another thing that folks will want to check out. But yeah, for a full recap and sort of our first impressions of iOS and iPadOS 15, stay tuned for the next episode of App Stories.
Yeah, the other thing I think with notifications that I'm looking forward to is that there's a status API. So, when you set a particular mode, you can notify people that you're in that mode, and that will work in Apple's apps right out of the box when the OSs are updated in the fall. I do hope that a lot of apps adopt this, because I'm thinking about especially apps that are not particularly known for having strong native presences on iOS, like Slack, for instance, and maybe even Discord, that if I'm in do not disturb mode, that it tells people everywhere that I'm in do not disturb mode, and they don't have to go looking in something like messages to figure that out. Yeah. But I guess we'll see on that.
Yeah. All right, John, we've done too many stories on the site to mention them all on Unwind. So I'll tell you what. People can go to our special WWDC 21 hub and see all the stories that we did. Now I will let you pick and choose what you want to cover. You have this power right now.
All right. I'm going to start with watchOS 8 because it's a quick one. There's not a lot that's changed here, but it is one of the major OSs, so I think it deserves a little bit of attention. It is adding an expanded, basically the Breathe app has turned into the mindfulness app, and it's got more things in it like reflections and other ways to get your mindful minutes in. So there's that. There's also an expanded sleep tracking system in the Apple Watch, which looks like it might be good. A couple of new types of exercises like Tai Chi, and a new Photos watch face that's based around portrait mode that allows you to have kind of a layered effect on someone's portrait and put the time slightly behind their head, which it looks really nice. It doesn't seem to be the kind of thing that I'll probably use, but the Photos face is a very popular one, so you can imagine people are going to probably use that a lot. And then finally, I would mention that the text input system has been changed significantly on the watch, which looks like it'll make it easier to kind of combine dictation, scribble, emoji pickers, and all sorts of things all in one to get a message typed out a lot faster than was possible before. And then finally, a new home app. It's still based on those big tiles that I don't like, but it is going to anticipate what you want to use based on what you're controlling. So for instance, maybe you're unlocking your front door and it suggests that you also turn on the light nearby in your front entryway or something like that. So it remains to be seen how well that works. I never put beta 1 of the watchOS on my watch, so it's going to be a little while before I actually try this, but it does look like it's an improvement to the home app. What should we talk about next, Federico?
Let's see. I want to call out the fact that Apple Music Lossless and Spatial Audio finally rolled out. And
it was a weird week. It was a weird WWDC. There were all these music things that happened that weren't really totally. You could, to me, they were part of WWDC, but I think technically they probably weren't.
Yeah, technically they weren't because they rolled out to iOS 14 devices as well.
Right.
And yeah, so Spatial Audio and Lossless and High-Res Lossless are now available on Apple Music. you will see on compatible albums those one of the, if not all three, special badges on the album detail page. Apple also did, they rolled out their media strategy this week, which is Eddie Q did an interview and Zane Lowe of Apple Music also did an interview about Apple Music. Zane Lowe more about record label pages, which also expanded this week. But Eddie Q is talking about spatial audio, why it's a big deal, why it's a game changer. And I think the overall sense that we get from this launch is that lossless and high-res lossless, Apple mostly did those because why not, right? Because it's a
right, because they had the tracks already.
They had the data, they had the tracks, but Eddie Q was like, yeah, I mean, I don't care. Like, is lossless better than lossy? Like, sure, it sounds better, so let's do it. That was basically the extent of what Eddie Q said. And he said, like, rightfully so, I think most people aren't going to notice the difference from what we serve as lossy on Apple Music and lossless or even high-res lossless.
I think one thing that he said too that's important is that they are going to be building spatial audio tools into Logic Pro,
exactly,
which is a big deal because that'll make it accessible to a lot more people to actually record this way.
Exactly, and I think the real important announcement here is that Apple really believes in spatial audio as powered by Dolby Atmos to create this sort of immersive experience for music. And I talked about this on Connected a few days ago. Right now, only thousands of songs are available in Dolby Atmos, which is a very small number compared to 75 million songs on Apple Music. And right now, the production levels on these songs is a bit all over the place. It's a bit hit and miss, right? Like some albums, they sound really good and fun. Like The Weeknd's album, for example. You listen to something like Blinding Lights, and it sounds really good. Like you can tell the instrument separation, you can tell the bigger soundstage. It's really fun to listen to. But some other songs, it's what happened to Buddy Holly by Weezer? What happened to What's My Age Again by Blink-182? I saw some people on Twitter saying that they listened to What's My Age Again and now it sounds better, sort of like Apple replaced the track. And I need to double check that myself because I could see a scenario in which some record labels, just to be part of Apple's initial promotion, they rushed out a Dolby Atmos mix of existing songs, and now they can go in and actually update them because they want to do a better job at mixing those songs. So I could see that those tracks actually getting better over time, but overall, it all comes down to whether record labels will continue to put out spatial audio music in the future. Apple is saying this is a big deal. We believe this is the feature that the average consumer can tell, it's active on Apple Music, and it's what makes Apple Music unique compared to other streaming services. But really, we have to see, like, when the next major album by Taylor Swift or by Billie Eilish comes out, will it be in spatial audio? I think so. Will it convince, other smaller artists on a regular basis to continuously put out Dolby Atmos music? We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think Billie Eilish's albums, any of them, are on spatial audio yet, at least when I checked a couple of days ago. And I would suggest if you want to hear good spatial audio mixes, look for Apple's special playlists in Apple Music because there are good examples of them, and there's more than one playlist out there now. There's kind of one that's introduced by Zane Lowe who explains a little bit, and then there are other ones that are genre-based, so maybe find the type of music you love and use that to do that. Federico, before we move on to what else we have on MacStories this week, why don't we mention, too, the ADAs, because there were 12 winners of Apple Design Awards that were announced on Thursday in 6 categories. Each category had both an app and a game, and I think it was a great mix of award winners. There's everything from smaller indie developers like Brian Mueller to big companies making big games like League of Legends. So it kind of runs the gamut. All right, Federico, this week on Club MacStories, we don't have an issue out just yet because it's WWDC week and we're putting it out on Saturday. So look for that on Saturday. It's going to be WWDC themed. I know Federico is working on something about how the iOS 15 beta has already changed the way he's working with some of his note taking. I don't want to.
You thought that a beta would be a problem for my setup, but no, it actually improves my setup. So,
I can imagine. And you look, I've already talked to you a little bit during this show about how I think Shortcuts is going to make a big change to my daily workflow. So I kind of expect I'll be doing a story like that along those lines at some point myself. But it is WWDC themed. We'll have maybe a collection in there about some of our favorite moments from the week, as well as some essays and other things that we've collected during the week and written. So stay tuned for that. That'll be out sometime on Saturday. Federico, tell me what we did on App Stories. I mean, I guess maybe tell me what we didn't do on App Stories, because we did an awful lot of App Stories.
We did everything. So starting Tuesday up until today, we've been recording daily episodes of App Stories all about WWDC. We covered all the sort of the things that we found the most interesting. We did keynote first impressions, and then we dive deeper into the announcement and the sessions and the technical stuff that we found fascinating. So we talked about things like iPad keyboard navigation, shortcuts on the Mac, web extensions, live text and the camera. We talked about all kinds of things like the focus engine coming from tvOS to iPadOS in version 15, all kinds of things. And it's been fun. This is the second year that we've been doing this sort of a special series of episodes, daily episodes of App Stories during the week of WWDC. It's only something that we can do because the conference is remote. I don't think we would have the time to do this in person in San Jose.
No.
So this is one of the nice effects of the way that the world operates now. We've been able to do this for the past couple of years, and we did it again. And it's been fun, and I think people liked it. And stay tuned, because we're going to put out even more. We're not done yet.
No, we aren't done yet, and I'll tell you, I've actually got the workflow down for daily production of podcasts. So I feel like we need a daily show now. Well, maybe not really, but all right. Let me tell you a little bit about our sponsors, Federico, and we have two, because this is WWDC week and it's special week. The first one is Daylight, and Daylight is a CRM for Apple fans. It's for small businesses trying to stay on top of clients, leads, and projects that are evolving every day, because it can be really tough to manage that sort of thing. That's where Daylight comes in. Daylight is a native Mac CRM and business productivity tool designed to help you and your team manage more clients, close more deals, and finish more projects. Daylight is fully compatible with Big Sur and M1 powered Macs and works seamlessly with the Apple features that you already know and love. Things like Apple Mail, Apple Contacts, Calendar, Siri, Caller ID, and all sorts of other things, including Face ID and Touch ID for that matter. Unlike most web-based CRMs that focus on customer relationships and sales, Daylight's productivity focus is designed to help you and your team get more done throughout your full customer lifecycle. From meeting prospects to winning business to managing and moving pieces of projects, all the way through to follow-up and referrals and repeat business, it's all done in Daylight. Our thanks to Daylight for their support of the show. And for our second sponsor, we have Raycast, Federico. Raycast is something I've been talking about all week on App Stories because they were our official WWDC sponsor for this week. Say goodbye to Spotlight and hello to Raycast, because the thing is that with the press of just a keyboard shortcut, Raycast launches apps and a whole bunch more. It lets you use things like third-party apps and services, things like Google Workspace, GitHub, Jira, Asana, all those sorts of tools. You can check your schedule and join Zoom meetings with a single keystroke. You can access the clipboard, set reminders, take a quick note. It really is a super tool on the Mac. There are tons of other unique features too, like quick links for opening files, folders, and URLs that you can pass parameters to. There's even a text snippets system as well. And it's very privacy-minded, responsive, native, actively developed, which we always like to see, and scriptable with over 400 scripts available. So download it today for free at raycast.com. Our thanks to Raycast for supporting all of our WWDC coverage this year. All right, Federico, why don't you hit me with your Unwind picks?
I have one for you. It's a PS5 game that just came out, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Oh,
I'm
jealous.
This is the new Ratchet & Clank game for PS5. I started playing it last night, and I couldn't stop playing. It looks incredible. It is amazing. So this is an action platformer game It's very colorful. It's very kid-friendly, very family-friendly. The Ratchet and Clank series started on PS2. There have been games for PS3, PS4, PSP, PS Vita. It's one of Sony's most popular sort of first-party franchises. And it's a fun game, right? You're shooting with alien guns, and you have like all these strange and futuristic weapons to choose from. It's not a violent game. I mean, it's an action platformer game where you're controlling this Lombax creature named Ratchet and his best friend, the little robot Clank. And what's peculiar about the PS5 game is that it fully takes advantage of all the PS5 features.
Right.
So 3D audio, if you have a compatible 3D audio system, or the PS5 headphones, which I do, and it sounds really good. Haptic feedback with the DualSense controller. It's incredible. Like the amount of different haptics that the developers put into this game is just incredible. You can feel like when you're collecting the little bolts like around levels, you can feel that. You can feel when you open the menu, when you shoot your laser gun, you need to pull the R2 trigger all the way down, because of the peculiar what's it called, the feedback mechanism on the adaptive triggers on the DualSense controller. You need to put you can pull it halfway, or you can pull it all the way down, and you do different things. The DualSense is incredible. I think I actually prefer the DualSense here than in Returnal, which is another PS5 game that really takes advantage of the controller. But in Ratchet and Clank, it's incredible. And then I gotta mention the graphics and the performance. This game is beautiful. It's colorful. You can choose between 3 different graphics modes. My favorite one, however, is the Performance RT, which gets added to the game as soon as you it's a day one patch. So if you bought the physical game, you need to update it via your PS5. But basically, this graphics mode, it lets you play at 60 frames per second, which is the right way to go. I don't recommend playing this game at 30 frames per second. You can play a 60 frame with a slightly lower resolution, but with ray tracing enabled. So 60 frames with ray tracing, John, it looks fantastic. And
yeah, I can imagine.
The combination of all these things, so beautiful graphics, beautiful lighting effects, the controller and 3D audio, and the fact that it's just a fun, light-hearted game with great dialogue and great acting and voiceover. I mean, you can tell a lot of money was spent on this game, and it's the next big PS5 game. It's a lot of fun. It's not violent. It doesn't make me anxious, unlike Returnal. So I was playing this at night, and I didn't want to stop, but also it was very late, and I had to stop. So yeah.
I was going to say, based on the time that you texted me last night, I'm very impressed that at the end of WWDC, you were up that late.
Oh man, I can go another week. I don't care. I'm ready. Just I need my coffee, and I'm good to go.
All right, very good. My understanding too is with Ratchet and Clank is that moving from level to level is lightning fast too. Is that right?
Yes, that's the sort of the gimmick, if you will, of this game, is that your enemy, Dr. Nefarious, got a hold of this weapon called the Dimensionator, and basically that weapon creates rifts in your current dimension, and it lets you travel to different dimensions. And so all the different mechanics that you can imagine in traveling back and forth between like the same spot but in different dimensions. And the PS5's, fast SSD and loading times, those help in sort of traveling very quickly between these different locations and different dimensions without any loading times whatsoever. It really is remarkable, like what you can do here. That was something that I could already appreciate in Spider-Man Miles Morales, right? With basically the fast travel occurring in like 2 seconds. But here it's just, it's a continuous flow of action. And it looks just, and then when you look up at the city, like your first location is this, what's it called? Nefarious City, I believe. And you see all these hundreds of starships flying overhead, and all these neon signs and people moving around. It's an incredible sight. It's an incredible effect. It's one of the first games that truly sells you on what does it mean to play a next-gen game. And I think this is what it means. This is exactly what it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, the gameplay videos that I've seen, really, it seems as though they've done a remarkable job of incorporating that fast travel into the actual game
Yep.
itself to make it feel seamless.
Yep.
All right. Well, my pick this week is a single because I haven't listened to that much or done. I don't have a lot to to recommend WWDC week, but this is one that you actually recommended to me yesterday, which was Lord's new single called Solar Power, which is a fantastic song. I highly recommend this especially if you want to test out the new lossless streaming on Apple Music, because that's exactly what I did. I hooked up my iPhone to these little black boxes that I have that runs the lossless stream through my stereo system, and it sounds fantastic. I got that thing turned up loud, and it's a great single. It's first release in 4 years for Lord.
Yeah,
very good. If you're a fan, this is one you have to check out. So the album's coming. I don't know that there's a date for the full release yet, but this is the first single, and it was released on Thursday. So check it out. Okay, Federico, that's it for today. I want to thank our two sponsors again. That's Daylight and Raycast. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. Federico is at Vitici on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVORHWES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.